Before coming to Glasgow, Scotland, some people told me there was nothing to see here. But after spending 24 hours in this city, Glasgow completely shocked me with its Victorian architecture, hidden gems, street art, and surprisingly strong city character. In this Glasgow travel guide, I'll show you exactly what I did in one full day, how much I spent, what mistakes I made, what disappointed me, and whether Glasgow is actually worth adding to your Scotland travel itinerary. Our Scotland road trip adventure began after a long journey from Larnaca with my brother, landing at Glasgow Airport late at night. The airport was small, so arrival was quick, but since we were tired, we skipped the bus and took a taxi instead for €50. My first impression of Scotland confirmed what many had warned me about. The Scottish accent can be difficult to understand at first, but our driver was so warm and funny that even with the accent barrier, we had a genuinely pleasant first conversation in Glasgow. About 20 minutes later, we arrived at Holiday Inn Express Riverside, a practical base for exploring the city, with the riverside, metro, and train connections all within walking distance. On our first morning, after breakfast, we stepped outside into a Glasgow that was already waking up movement, local life, that early energy on the streets. A quick walk to Argyle Street Station, €6 for 2 return tickets, and a 7-minute ScotRail ride brought us to Exhibition Centre. But as soon as we stepped off the train, we made our first small mistake. We accidentally walked into the SEC bridge, the pink Smarty tube, heading in completely the wrong direction. Not a disaster, and honestly one of those funny travel moments, but a reminder that even the most walkable cities can quietly steal your time if you stop paying attention. After correcting our direction, we walked through Finnieston Quay, immediately feeling that this was one of Glasgow's more modern, higher quality districts. Then we reached the Clyde Arc, also known as the Squinty Bridge. This bridge has its own iconic architecture, but more importantly, it frames one of Glasgow's most symbolic landmarks, the massive Finnieston crane. This was where I started to understand that Glasgow is not a checklist city. It has an industrial identity, a riverside character, and a visual language that feels completely different from other UK cities. For a place some told me to skip, this already felt surprisingly strong. After the Clyde Arc, a 12-minute walk brought us to Argyle Street, lively, long, packed with shops and energy. From there, we entered Kelvingrove Park, and this was where Glasgow really surprised me. Yes, it's a popular green space, but what made it special was how local it felt. People running, walking their dogs, relaxing on the grass, soaking up the rare Scottish sunshine. As we climbed higher through the park, passing Victorian fountains and monuments, the view toward the University of Glasgow started opening up, and that was when Glasgow truly began to impress me. After passing the Thomas Carlyle statue and walking uphill, the first building that welcomed us was Gilmore Hill Centre. When we entered University Avenue, the atmosphere shifted completely, suddenly surrounded by Gothic revival architecture that made this part of Glasgow feel far more impressive than I had expected. Inside the campus, the 200-year-old Hunterian Museum houses over 1 million objects across art, science, and the humanities. The east and west quadrangles reveal large, elegant inner courtyards. But the most magical point, and probably my favorite architectural moment of the entire day, was the University of Glasgow Cloisters, tucked between those two courtyards. The University of Glasgow is not just an educational institution. It is one of the most important tourist landmarks in the city, and absolutely one of the best places to visit in Glasgow. This is one of Glasgow's true hidden gems. After leaving the university, we continued through Kelvingrove Park along a tree-lined path with views of the River Kelvin. We couldn't go inside Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum, an honest travel moment where I felt genuinely disappointed with our timing, because even from the outside, its grand Victorian structure was impossible to ignore. From there, we passed through the lively streets of the West End one last time before catching the metro back toward the city center. As soon as we exited Glasgow Central, we found ourselves in the thick of it, tall buildings, traffic, cafes, people moving in every direction. The clock tower above the station, the Bank of Scotland building across the street, the busy pavements, it was a dynamic urban rhythm that felt completely different from the morning's calm. We visited in June during a sudden Scottish heat wave, and people were out in shorts and t-shirts as if summer had finally arrived. After a short walk, we reached Buchanan Street luxury shops, street performances, impressive Victorian architecture, the Glasgow Royal Concert Hall. This is easily one of the main places to visit in Glasgow if you want to feel the city's real energy. St. George's Tron Church stood out as one of the symbolic buildings here, and West George Street led us toward Glasgow Queen Street Station and George Square. Because we didn't want to lose time, we had a quick lunch at Buchanan Galleries for €25 for 2 people, then walked toward George Square. Unfortunately, the square was under construction, almost impossible to capture proper visuals. So instead of lingering, we moved on and almost immediately spotted the Gallery of Modern Art with its neoclassical facade and symmetrical columns. Royal Exchange Square right next to it added a lively cafe atmosphere. After this, I tried to find the famous Lighthouse building, designed by legendary Scottish architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh. The entrance was hidden in a narrow side street off Buchanan Street, and honestly, finding it was not easy. When I finally did, it was closed for renovation, definitely one of the disappointments of the day. This is the reality of travel. Sometimes the place you're most excited to see simply isn't available when you arrive. After a few more walks around the city center, it was time to collect our rental car for the Scotland road trip starting the next day. For 5 days with full insurance, the car rental cost €550 and we parked it near our hotel for €14 per day. Then we continued exploring through the Glasgow Mural Trail, where large street art pieces painted on building walls softened the city's grey urban look. This showed me another side of Glasgow. Creative, gritty, modern, and visually unexpected. From there, we reached Merchant City, an area that transformed in the 1980s and today feels like Glasgow's most colorful and bohemian lifestyle district. On our route, we saw the Tron Steeple and the Tolbooth Steeple, 2 of the many clock towers scattered across Glasgow. For me, these towers are a reminder of the city's industrial past, when time and daily rhythm became essential to urban life. After about 12 minutes of walking, we reached the Barony Hall, a Gothic Victorian-era building. Right across from it, Provence Lordship, built in 1471, the oldest surviving house in Glasgow, and one of only 4 medieval buildings still standing in the city. Then we reached Glasgow Cathedral, one of the most important examples of Gothic stonework in Europe and a rare medieval church that survived the Scottish Reformation. In its grounds, you can see the James White statue and the remains of Bishop's Castle. From there, we crossed the Bridge of Sighs and walked up toward Glasgow Necropolis, the city of the dead. This vast Victorian garden cemetery felt a little eerie walking through it, but at the same time, it offered some of the most impressive city views of the entire day. On our way back in the early evening, Glasgow had shifted again. The after-work crowds filled the streets. The city felt more intense, and we passed between street art, renovated buildings, and historical structures still under restoration. This was one of the honest sides of Glasgow. Some parts are beautiful and full of character, but some areas feel a little raw, grey, and under construction. Before returning to the hotel, we stopped at Tesco €25 for road trip supplies, then had dinner at Nando's for €40. After 30,000 steps, even a simple meal tasted like a feast. Then we finally rested, because the next morning our Scotland road trip adventure would officially begin. For these first 24 hours in Glasgow, our real spending for 2 people included €50 for the taxi from Glasgow Airport, €349 for 2 nights at Holiday Inn Express Riverside, €6 for return train tickets, €25 for a quick lunch at Buchanan Galleries, €550 for a 5-day car rental with full insurance, €14 per day for parking, €25 for Tesco shopping, and €40 for dinner at Nando's. If you're visiting Glasgow on a minimum budget, you can reduce costs significantly by taking the airport bus instead of a taxi, choosing supermarket food, walking more, and skipping the rental car if you're only staying inside Glasgow. But if your Glasgow visit is part of a larger Scotland road trip, the car rental becomes one of the biggest and most important expenses of the journey. My biggest personal mistake in Glasgow was trying to fit too much into one day. Places like Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum, the University of Glasgow, and Glasgow Cathedral deserve far more time than we gave them. Another mistake, not checking renovation status in advance. Both George Square and the Lighthouse building were affected during our visit, and that directly limited what we could see and film. My honest Glasgow travel tip is simple. Don't come here expecting a polished fairy tale city. Come here for the architecture, the local life, the university atmosphere, the murals, the history, and a city with a very strong personality. So, is Glasgow worth visiting? Honestly, yes, but not necessarily in the way people expect. Glasgow is not perfect, and it is not always visually clean or postcard-like, but that is exactly what makes it interesting. This was only the first episode of my Scotland travel series. In the next videos, we continue the road trip into even more dramatic parts of Scotland. Would you spend 24 hours in Glasgow, or would you skip it? Drop your answer in the comments, I'd love to know. And if this Glasgow travel guide helped you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check the booking links in the description for hotels, flights, car rentals, tours, and eSIM options.